It's only sport with Martin Devlin on the platform. Brought to you by One New Zealand. Let's get connected.
It's time, episode 101, the ATM podcast. Martin Devlin, me, yes, Mark Watson, international broadcaster of much competence and acclaim, recently back from the Paralympics in Paris. We're talking All Blacks today. We'll talk both our cricket teams, both losing of late, and this rather peculiar story about the Football Ferns emblazoned all over the Herald at the moment, saying that the team's broken their silence about Coach Klimková, only the article doesn't really say anything.
Apologise to me!
But Mark, let's kick it with the All Blacks, because contrasting and conflicting reactions to that win in Australia. At times we looked like the best rugby team in the world, didn't we? And then we finished clawing and clinging on in a match which there's no way we were going to lose, but we could have goddamn lost it.
Yeah, quite extraordinary. I mean, I think Australia were woeful in that first half, and that would have been of real concern to the coaching staff. When they did get it together in the second half, they just simply did what every other team's done to us, and we just simply haven't been able to find a way to answer it. I think this team did show what we are capable of at some point, but what are we, 8 tests now, and we still haven't put together the perfect performance, or a performance that I think is, worthy of the resource that's put into this team and the change in coaches. We continue to talk about 5 tests in a row we haven't scored a try in the last 20 minutes, but the biggest problem here, Martin, is our players are just not playing rugby anymore. So how can you expect to turn up in the last 20 minutes of a game when you just simply haven't played? You go and have a look at a guy like Tossie. He played against Fiji. Wellington, I think the Hurricanes' last Super Rugby game was the end of May. So he's basically played one game in 4 months. And I think you can apply that to a lot of the fringe players, a lot of the players on the bench. If you actually add up their minutes, how much rugby have they actually played? And they just haven't played any. And yet they're expected to somehow, off training, turn up and expect to be ready to play test match rugby. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, unless rugby is different to every other sport. I mean, training's training, but the only thing that simulates a race is a race. You take young Noah Hotham. I mean, Noah Hotham, it was part of a Crusaders team. So their last game was definitely in May. And he's played some minutes against Fiji, but he hasn't played since. He's had one game in 4 months. And, this test comes this week. Do they play him? Do they give him an opportunity? Or are they going to stick with TJ Perenara and experience? And then the next test is not till the 28th of October. And you also, there's a good chance he won't even get picked with, what's his name coming back from
Roigard,
Yeah, Roigard coming out of thing. So you got a 22-year-old, relatively new to Super Rugby, gets picked for the All Blacks, and in 6 months ends up playing one game. And then we expect these guys to be able to come off the bench. They've got to start playing. Why aren't they playing NPC? Why aren't these guys playing NPC? Patrick Tuipulotu, released for one game against Northland. And I can tell you, from friends who were at that game, he was absolutely blowing at the end of it because he just hadn't had any match time. Why didn't he play on the weekend? We want to wrap him in cotton wool. We might need him this week. And I'm just sick and tired of that mentality. This is part of the reason we're not performing off the bench. But also, isn't it amazing that, suddenly Wayne Smith's been flowing in. So we've got this cast of thousands and coaches, and yet none of them can still figure it out. So we've got to go to the professor. So we've got to go back back to the future to Wayne Smith to get some answers. And I think that is more concerning than anything. And I just wonder whether it is just a little bit too Canterbury focused, in terms of the coaching setup, Crusader focused. I see that Geordie Barrett's out this week now. So they've gone to Shea Fihaki. I mean, Shea Fihaki, I've watched him play Super Rugby for the Crusaders. The guy can't tackle. Why is Sean Stevenson not brought into the side? Why is Sean Stevenson not given another opportunity within this All Black environment? And I think these are the questions for me. I've just got to say, Matt, I'm just so incredibly disappointed with the conservative approach of Scott Robertson and the arrogance of Jason Ryan.
Well, I'm sitting here nodding along to all of that, and I just feel so frustrated that we've almost been told now that everything is okay, that this is as good as it is, this is as good as it gets, and we should be happy with the way that the All Blacks are playing because they're winning, and they're winning narrowly. I expect more than that, and I actually demand more than that, and I want more than that. I want to see this team improving. I want to see it better than it was last year, better than it was the year before. And I think 8 test matches is plenty. Good opponents that we've played, some really soft games in there, where pretty much there's your experimentation. Having said all of that, mate, we bombed a couple of absolutely beautiful tries, and that would have put the game to bed probably with about half an hour to go. So, yeah, there's just a lot of confusion at the end of that. I suppose we'll put it all in context with how we play this weekend.
Martin, just on that again, I mean, I heard you talk about it. We discussed it last week, but as you said, go back to 2017, there are 10 players still in this team. And I think it's a good point you make last week, and that is this: have these players reached their ceiling? Is there any more improvement? What, are they going to become great players next week? Just hang on, guys, or the week after, or the following week. And I'm just not sure they're ever going to be great players. And, the Damien McKenzie experiment, is it a case of Scott Robertson having backed himself into a corner here where he no longer knows how to get out of it?
Well, again, and you've got to ask yourself who's next, because it's either, as you say, Back to the Future Beauden Barrett, or you put in Harry Plummer, who isn't as great a player as McKenzie is. We know that, but maybe he's more reliable when it comes to actually putting a All Black jersey on and doing the most basic things right, which McKenzie can't seem to get through his head. That's what his job is when he plays for the All Blacks.
Apologise to me!
Let's look at our 2 cricket teams. The Black Caps always up against it in Gaul. We had some chances in that match, but, once again, batting our frailty and let us down. I thought the bowlers did okay. But the White Ferns, Mark, and this is now getting to a stage where it's gone past laughable. I don't know what the word is to describe it now. It's certainly embarrassing in terms of their results. But what is even more embarrassing is the fact that there is no consequence to this. That's 10 losses in a row. That's 9 T20s in a row. They've won 2 of 16 this year. One of those was a dead rubber, and now they play Australia again in a dead rubber and then go to the T20 World Cup. We talk about this a lot. And I don't have anything against these women, these players. I don't have anything. What I have is, continued angst at the way that this side is reported. Their tyres are pumped up, they're blown up, they are actually feted and celebrated like they're an international class team when clearly they are not.
Oh, no, I agree, Martin. I mean, they'll get the same billing over summer as the men's team, and they'll be told that, look, there's this international coming up. They'll get the television coverage. The players will walk out there knowing that minimum they're earning $120,000 a year plus the match fee. They'll probably be put on certain television shows and elevated to some sort of celebrity status. And I've said this in the past, they are just club athletes who have been just dressed up to be made out to be some sort of elite athlete. Yes, they're professional in the fact that they do get paid, but again, it's the media scrutiny for me. It's actually just patronising. You keep telling us you want equality and equity, but we just don't see it from the media at all. There is no scrutiny whatsoever when it comes to this women's cricket team, and I know we're going to touch a little bit shortly on the football ferns as well, because I think that sort of again the lack of media scrutiny when it comes to that compared to when maybe perhaps a men's coach is involved is quite different. In regards to the men's team, look, it's amazing, isn't it, that again we had this warm-up game against Afghanistan. You can blame the administration in India, you can blame Afghanistan, whoever, but I blame New Zealand cricket. Once again, a warm-up game that didn't happen, no different than the T20 Cricket World Cup. But I just look at the landscape at the moment. Who are the highest paid sports people in this country? It's the rugby players, it's the cricket players. Who get the most media coverage? It's the rugby players, it's the cricket players, it's the league players. Who are always crying the most about how hard life is? It's those same organisations. Who are the teams that continually underperform? It's those same organisations. And I just sit there and I go, what's the common denominator here? I go, players' associations in the background, a feminist media to a degree that have been driving a lot of this sort of narrative and pumping up their tyres, as you've said. And it's time, and then, you look at how easy it is, say, the Hamish Kerrs, how easy you've been able to get him on, and you do go and have a look at the Hayden Wilds and the Zoe Hobbs and these other athletes out there that are actually working incredibly hard. And that's just the big disappointing thing for me, is that the more they get, the more they want, and the less demands on them. I just want teams to go out and represent us. That's what you're there for. You're there to go out and be the best you can be. You're there to go out to create nationalism, to change the mood of a nation, to make people who are doing life really, really tough for whatever reason, to suddenly just have 24 hours to smile, to be proud of. And that just seems to be all lost and forgotten these days. It's just this me attitude. I mean, in seriousness, I mean, Tim Southey, how irrelevant and how ineffective has he been in this test? You know, we see Patel go out there and take 6 or 7 wickets. Why has he not been playing every single test since he took 10 in an innings against India some years back? I mean, this is the dumb stuff we deal with. You've talked yourself about New Zealand cricket, 169 staff employed, 6 or 7 high performance staff. And they just simply haven't got a clue. And part of the problem is too, mate, all of those organisations are so insular. We've got to employ people from within. If you don't know, if you haven't played cricket, if you haven't been around cricket, you don't know cricket. We don't want to know you. And you know, guys like me, guys like you, well, you know, what's the default setting? Have you guys ever played the game? Oh, you guys just don't get it.
Apologise to me!
It's Only Sport with Martin Devlin on the platform. Brought to you by One New Zealand. Let's get connected.